He gripped the throttle like it was already his. I hadn't even finished briefing the state attorney on a high-profile fraud case when I saw the kid. Karen's son leaning on my Harley like it belonged to him. My AirPods were in, my laptop balanced on my knee, and my voice calmed but my eyes were locked on the scene outside the office window. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear him. I got up, walked outside, still on the call, and that's when he said it. Just give me the bike, man. My mom says it's a community asset now. I froze. What? Before I could even respond, he pulled out his phone. A second later, Karen herself stormed into the driveway, screaming about property redistribution, waving HOA bylaws like a badge. You're being aggressive, she barked. You're threatening my son. Then she dialed 911. I was still speaking to the state attorney of Florida. Guess how I had police en route? Over a Harley, over nothing. Or maybe over everything. I couldn't hang up on the state attorney, not in the middle of this briefing. I was giving him evidence tied to a 6-figure fraud scheme connected to 2 city contractors and an illegal shell company. But now I had Karen's son pacing near my motorcycle, filming me like I was the criminal. Stay calm, I told myself, stepping back toward the garage. I lowered my voice just enough to keep the call going without escalating the circus outside. Sir, I'm going to send you the bank log now, I said into the call. My hands were shaking. Karen's voice was climbing to a scream. He threatened my son. He's got a motorcycle here that's not allowed under our neighborhood rules. He has it parked to intimidate us. She was shouting loud enough for the whole street to hear. The worst part? I could see 3 of my other neighbors watching from across the street, and none of them moved. Not one person stepped in. They just watched. One even started recording. Karen's son smirked at me. You're about to get arrested, man, he said under his breath. The state attorney, still on the line, paused. Is everything okay on your end? I swallowed hard. Actually, sir, the HOA president just called the police on me while I was briefing you. Silence. Then you're kidding. But I wasn't, because now I could hear sirens, and they were getting closer. The problem wasn't the motorcycle. I'd owned that Harley since I got out of the Marines. I'd parked it in my own driveway behind the house, out of sight of the road. But Karen had taken photos of it 2 days ago, during her daily neighborhood walk, if you can call power stalking a walk. She claimed it violated HOA guidelines about non-standard vehicles. But what set her off today was different. Her son, maybe 19 or 20, had approached me earlier that morning, saying he wanted to check it out. I told him politely it wasn't for sale. He pressed harder, said his mom was on the board and could make the paperwork disappear. I laughed it off. Maybe I shouldn't have. Apparently being told no was enough for Karen to declare war. Now, with the police on the way, I closed my laptop, ended the call, and stepped fully outside. Let's settle this, I said, mostly to myself. But the second I stepped onto the porch, Karen pulled her son behind her like I was armed. He was threatening us again. She yelled at no one. She held her phone high, still connected to 911. He's coming closer. I fear for our lives. I froze mid-step. The last thing I needed was to make a wrong move. I raised my hands and turned slightly to the camera on my garage's ring system. It was all recording now every second. Thank God, the squad car rounded. The corner, lights flashing, tires screeching slightly as it pulled up. 2 deputies stepped out, hands near their holsters but not drawn.
Always.
One of them, Deputy Moss, recognized me immediately. I'd worked with him last year during a neighborhood theft case, gave him hard drive footage that cracked it wide open. His eyes narrowed as he looked from me to Karen. What's going on here? He asked sharply. Karen burst into a full performance. Tried to coerce my son into giving up personal information, and he's storing an illegal motorcycle that we believe is tied to criminal activity. Her son nodded along like a backup dancer. I just wanted to talk to him about it, the kid said, pretending to be hurt. Moss didn't move, sir, he asked, looking at me. I walked slowly toward him, keeping my hands visible. I was on a Zoom call with the state attorney's office. They can confirm that. Karen's son came into my driveway, touched my motorcycle, demanded it, then called her. She showed up and called you. That's all that happened. Karen scoffed. He's lying. He always thinks he's above the rules. He's the one harassing everyone. Moss looked at his partner. Check the ring cam, I said quickly. It caught the whole thing. Audio and video. The younger deputy nodded and walked toward the door. Karen's face twitched. This wasn't her first false report. Last year, she called in a complaint about another neighbor's dog claiming it had bitten her kid. Turned out the kid wasn't even home that day he was at football practice. But Karen had a talent for spinning stories so fast that sometimes even cops didn't know what was real. That was the danger here. It wasn't about the Harley. It wasn't even about her son. It was about control. I knew it. Moss knew it. But what mattered now was proof. My phone buzzed, text from the state attorney. Call me ASAP when clear. I'll have this logged. Good, at least someone higher up was paying attention. Meanwhile, Karen started pacing. He's manipulating. The system, she said, almost to herself. They always protect him. Her son kicked a rock off the edge of my driveway. Just give it to me, he mumbled. No one rides that piece of junk anyway. That's when I almost snapped. But I didn't, because the deputy had finished reviewing the footage. He walked back out, face unreadable. Ma'am, he said to Karen, we saw the footage. There was no threat made. No illegal activity. And your son was the first one to approach his property? Karen's mouth opened, then closed. You're not going to do anything, she hissed. A motorcycle? Deputy Moss stepped in. Ma'am, we're not here to enforce HOA rules. We're here to respond to emergencies. This isn't one. If you keep filing false reports, you'll be facing charges. Her face went crimson. This isn't over, she said through her teeth. Oh, it never is with you, Moss replied quietly. She spun around, grabbed her son's arm, and marched back toward their house. But not before yelling back over her shoulder, I'll see you at the next board meeting. You'll regret. This I stood there, stunned but trying to stay composed. My Harley sat gleaming in the sun, untouched. But everything else, my mood, my day, my call with the state attorney, was wrecked. I looked at Moss. Thanks. He nodded. You might want to think about installing a second camera. She's not done. And with that, he walked back to his car. I watched them drive away. Sirens silent now, but the threat still echoing in my mind. And as I picked up my laptop, ready to resume the briefing, a new notification popped up on my screen. HOA Board Emergency Meeting. Scheduled harassment complaint filed by Karen M. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The notice hit my inbox like a punch. Subject: Emergency HOA Board Meeting Harassment Complaint. Filed by Karen M. Time: 6:30 p.m. Location: Community Hall. Just 6 hours away. I sat frozen in front of my screen, the earlier events replaying like a loop. Karen screaming, her son's smug face, the police sirens, and now the sin. Official complaint. I opened the attachment. It was 4 pages long, typed, formatted, bullet-pointed. She'd clearly prepared it in advance. The headline alone made my stomach tighten. Aggressive behavior. Motorcycle intimidation and resident endangerment complaint against Mr. Redacted. She'd made it sound like I was some roaming biker thug terrorizing the neighborhood. And now, I had hours to prepare a defense bee because everyone on that board had known Karen for years. Some owed her favors. Some were scared of her. And some, I suspected, quietly agreed with her. I paced the office. My hands were still shaking from earlier, but I forced myself to sit down and go line by line through her complaint. She accused me of unauthorized vehicle storage, passive verbal threats, verbal abuse against a minor, and even escalating neighborhood tensions. No mention of the video, no mention of her son trespassing, and no reference to the police footage clearing me. I forwarded the complaint to the state attorney with a single line. This is the retaliation I warned you about. Then I emailed Deputy Moss, requesting a copy of his official statement. I was done playing defense. If Karen wanted a fight in the boardroom, she was going to get one with evidence. I pulled security cam footage, clipped the key moments, organized call logs, and printed everything out. By 5 p.m., my desk looked like a legal war room. Still, I knew how this would look to people who didn't like me to begin with. It wasn't just about facts. It was about perception. Kara knew that better than anyone. The community hall looked like a courtroom when I walked in. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and half the folding chairs were already filled with board members and curious neighbors. Karen sat at the front, her son beside her, looking like a wounded child actor prepping for a role. She saw me walk in and didn't even blink. Just gave me that cold, confident smirk, the kind you see on someone who thinks they've already won. I walked to the designated respondent seat and placed my folders neatly in front of me. The board president, an older man named Harold, called the meeting to order with the robotic calm of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. This meeting is to address a harassment complaint filed by resident Karen M. against Mr. Redacted. Regarding an incident on date, both parties will have time to speak. Evidence will be reviewed. Karen stood up before he could finish. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a matter of urgent safety. My son was threatened. A motorcycle was used as intimidation. And this man has created a pattern of hostility that violates our community values. She pulled out photos zoomed in shots of my Harley, my garage. Even one where I was stepping outside mid-call with the state attorney. He parks it there to provoke, she said. It's loud, it's unauthorized, and it's aggressive. And when my son politely asked about it, he was verbally attacked and filmed. She paused dramatically. Then police were called. My son is traumatized. I had to do what any responsible mother would do, call for help. A few people in the audience nodded. That's what scared me most. I stood when it was my turn. Everything, she said, I began, is a lie, and I can prove it. I played the ring cam footage for the room, the moment her son stepped on my property. His demand, Karen's arrival. Her fake 911 call. My calm voice. The police response, and the officers clearing me on the spot. When it ended, there was silence. I held up the police report. This is from Deputy Moss. It says there was no threat, no aggression, and no crime committed. Karen filed a false report. And now she's trying to weaponize the HOA to punish me for saying no to her son. Karen stood again, fire in her voice. He's manipulating the system. He edited that video. You don't know what happened before the camera turned on? Her voice cracked, whether from rage or strategy, I couldn't tell. Harold raised a hand. We've seen enough. He leaned forward. Board members will deliberate now. He stepped into the adjacent room. Karen didn't sit. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes locked on me like a challenge. Belong here, she whispered. This is a family neighborhood. We don't need people like you disrupting it. I stared back. People like me? Veterans? Professionals? Or just people who don't hand over their property when your kid demands it? Her nostrils flared. This isn't over, she said again, just like she had to the deputies. No, I replied. Now it's just documented. The board returned 20 minutes later. Harold read their decision in a flat tone. After reviewing both testimonies, video footage, and police documentation, the board finds no violation of HOA regulations by Mr. Redacted. The matter is closed. Karen didn't react. Not even a flinch. Just grabbed her son's arm and walked out without a word. The moment she was gone, several neighbors turned to me. Some nodded in support.
I want to wait.
One woman even whispered about time someone stood up to her. I packed up my evidence, trying to stay composed, but I knew this win was temporary. Karen wasn't the type to back off after one loss. She would come back smarter, nastier, and more organized. What scared me wasn't the next meeting. It was what she'd do in between. As I walked home that night, the street felt quieter, but not safer. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Voicemail. I played it. A distorted voice. No caller ID. Just 8 words. Calm and cold. You made a mistake. Should have sold it. The voicemail ended, and for a full 5 seconds I stood frozen on my front porch, keys in one hand, phone in the other, staring at nothing. You made a mistake. You should have sold it. 8 words, quiet and emotionless, but calculated to shake me. My front porch light flickered once, then went still. Coincidence? I didn't believe in those anymore. Not after today. I looked down the street. Everything looked normal on's mode. Lights on, cars in driveways, but something was off. Know that gut-deep instinct you get when something's wrong? That feeling from the Marines came back hard? I walked inside, locked the door, checked every window, and then hit replay on the voicemail. I knew that voice, or thought I did. It was altered, but the cadence. The pacing it was Karen's son, or someone close to him. Its way it wasn't. Random was a warning. I sat down at the kitchen counter, loaded the security feed on my phone, and scrubbed through the last hour. Then I saw it. At 7:13 p.m., just after I left for the HOA meeting, a shadow had passed by my garage. Not a neighbor walking a dog. This was someone deliberately avoiding the front camera. They lingered near the Harley, moved around the side, then vanished. No entry, no vandalism, just a message. I pulled the footage, labeled it, and backed it up. I knew exactly what this was. Psychological warfare. Classic low-level intimidation. This wasn't about a bike. It was about control. About forcing me out of the neighborhood door, at least, into silence. But they underestimated something crucial. I'd been trained for worse. I wasn't backing down. The next morning, I filed a formal report with the sheriff's office. I handed over the voicemail, the camera footage, and a statement. The officer taking the report raised an eyebrow. "That's HOA drama," he muttered. "Feels more like stalking." Nodded. "It's escalating." He promised to escalate it to the local detective handling domestic disputes, but I could tell from his tone this wasn't their priority. That was the most dangerous part. Karen knew how to operate in that gray zone, right at the edge of legality. It's just enough to scare, but not enough to charge. I drove back home slowly, watching. Every car behind me, no tail. But still, I parked the Harley inside the garage this time, locked the doors, double-checked the alarms. I wasn't scared. I was focused, and I had work to do. Around noon, I got a knock on the door. Not a bang, just 2 soft taps. I checked. The ring feed first. It was the mail carrier. I opened the door. "Got a certified letter for you," he said, holding out a stiff envelope. I signed, took it, and he nodded. "Have a safe one." I tore it open and unfolded the paper. Legal letterhead. Law firm I didn't recognize. The subject line chilled. "Me, cease and desist. Harassment and defamation, Karen M." My pulse kicked into high gear. She'd lawyered up. The letter accused me of slander, defamation, creating a hostile environment, and public character attacks. It demanded I remove all footage from social media which I hadn't posted. Stop discussing her publicly, and refrain from intimidating HOA members with legal threats. The irony nearly made me laugh. If it weren't so calculated, I called my attorney immediately. She read the letter twice, then sighed. "It's a bluff, but a smart one. She's laying legal groundwork in case she pushes you far enough to react. Don't give her that reaction." I nodded. "So what do I do?" Her answer was fast. "Document everything. Keep calm and get ready, because she's not just aiming to scare you. She wants to discredit you. That's her power play." That night, I upgraded my camera system. Added 2 more outside. One hidden inside the mailbox, another near the alley. Karen wouldn't see them, but I would. And now I had every angle covered. I also installed a backup power source and cloud sync, she or someone working with. Hurt tried to tamper with anything again, I'd have them on record. This wasn't paranoia. This was prep. 2 nights later, it happened. Around 2:14 a.m., a motion alert buzzed my phone. I sat up instantly, opened the feed, and saw him. Karen's son, hoodie, backpack, flashlight. He crept down the alley between our houses, stopped near my garage window, and looked around. Then, he pulled something out of his pocket, looked like a small crowbar. I zoomed in. He tried the garage side door. Locked. He didn't force it, just tested it. Then he moved to the rear camera, looked straight into the lens, smiled, held up his middle finger, then walked off. He wanted me to see him. He wanted me to know he wasn't done. I downloaded the footage, filed a second police report that morning, and this time requested a restraining order. That's when the phone rang again. State Attorney's Office. "We reviewed the evidence you submitted," the woman said. "We're officially opening a case into your HOA president's conduct." I blinked. "Wait, Karen?" She confirmed it. "We've seen repeated signs of harassment, targeted retaliation, and possible misuse of HOA authority. We'll need your cooperation. Can we set up a time to talk in person?" I agreed instantly. My hands were still cold, but my focus was razor sharp. This wasn't just about defending my property anymore. This was about exposing a pattern and network of abuse hiding behind community rules. But deep down, I knew something else too. Karen would find out. And when she did, she'd burn every bridge she could to protect her throne. She wasn't just coming after my Harley. Now she'd come after my job, my reputation, maybe even my safety. But I was ready, because this time, I wasn't alone. She found out faster than I expected. Less than 24 hours after the state attorney's office called me, Karen was already mobilizing. I knew the moment I walked past the community bulletin board near the pool. A brand new notice was pinned up, with bold red letters, "Special HOA vote to remove board members undermining neighborhood integrity, July 6th. It was vague on purpose, but the subtext was loud and clear. She knew she wasn't going to defend herself. She was going to burn down the whole structure and rebuild it with loyalists. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a purge. And I was at the top of her target list. I snapped a photo of the notice, sent it to my attorney, and then started calling every board member I thought might stand on neutral ground. Only one picked up, and his voice was shaking. "She's calling emergency meetings without protocol," he said. "Said it was about preserving neighborhood peace, but she's naming people, you, Harold, even Rosa." I asked him if she mentioned the investigation. "No," he whispered. "But the way she's acting, she knows something's coming." That afternoon, HOA board emails started flying. A new narrative was forming fast. I was disruptive, non-cooperative, creating a hostile climate for longtime residents. She was trying to get ahead of the investigation by framing me as the problem. And it was working. Neighbors I'd known for 3 years started avoiding eye contact. One family that used to wave at me every morning now crossed the street without looking. I hadn't posted a single word about the investigation, but somehow the gossip machine was moving full speed. Karen was doing what she did best, spreading rot through whispers and weaponized friendliness. 2 days before the HOA vote, I found a printed flyer on my windshield. No envelope, no stamp, just bold text and a grainy photo of me standing next to the Harley. "Is this who we want in our community? Vote yes to restore peace." No signature, no source, but everyone knew. I grabbed the flyer and drove straight to Harold's house. He opened the door looking exhausted. "She's got 3 new proxy votes," he said before I could even speak. "People who've never attended a meeting in years. Check the signatures. They're legal. Barely, but legal." I handed him the flyer. He scanned it and sighed. This is how it starts, not with rules, with fear. I looked him dead in the eye. "Do we have any shot at stopping her?" He hesitated. "Maybe, but you'll have to speak, publicly on record, before the vote." That night, I sent an official request to speak during the HOA meeting. Karen tried to block it by citing ongoing misconduct investigations. I sent her response straight to the state attorney's office. They replied within hours, "You are legally entitled to speak at any open HOA function unless under quartered silence." "You are not. We are watching." I smiled for the first time in a week, but I knew Karen would twist it. The next day, a new lie hit the neighborhood group chat that I was being investigated by the state for fraud. Her son chimed in, acting like he'd overheard something important. "It's all going to come out soon," he wrote. "Just wait till the AG gets involved." No one corrected him. I screen captured everything and sent it to my legal file. This wasn't slander anymore. It was coordinated. The night of the vote, the community hall was packed. More than any HOA meeting in years. People who hadn't shown up for cleanup days or budget reviews were suddenly eager to raise their hands and voice opinions. Karen sat at the front like a queen, calm hair perfect, notes stacked in front of her. Her son sat to the side, arms crossed, watching me like a hawk. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't flinch. I walked straight to the front, held up the cease and desist letter, then held up the police report. 2 weeks ago, I was falsely accused. Police cleared me. The footage cleared me. But instead of accepting the truth, someone tried to ruin my reputation. And now, because I refused to give away my personal property, I've been targeted by a smear campaign. I paused, looked directly at Karen, then at the room. She'd do this to me for saying no? What happens when she turns on you? The room was dead quiet. Even Karen didn't interrupt. I pulled out my phone and played the voicemail. You made a mistake. You should have sold it. I watched faces shift. Neighbors who had been silent now looked visibly uncomfortable. Karen stood up fast. This is unrelated. This is theatrics. He's making himself a victim. I raised my hand. I'm done, I said. Then I stepped aside. The board deliberated behind closed doors for 15 minutes. When they came out, Harold took a breath. Motion to remove board members under item 4C has failed. The vote did not pass. Karen didn't move, didn't speak. Just stared at me with a look I'd seen once before in Afghanistan. The look of someone deciding what to destroy next. I walked back to my house with a strange mix of relief and dread. I'd survived the vote, but it felt like winning a battle in a war that wasn't even halfway over. That night, I turned off the lights early and watched my Ring camera feed in silence. At exactly 1:07 a.m., the same figure returned. Karen's son. This time, he didn't approach the garage. He just stood at the edge of my driveway, stared directly into the camera, and smiled. Then he reached into his hoodie and held up a single sheet of paper, slowly placed it on my windshield. I walked away. I didn't open it until morning. 3 words, handwritten, all caps. She's not done. I stared at the note until the sun broke over the horizon. 3 words, no signature, just pressure bleeding through ink. Sheth's not done. And I believed it. Not because it was a threat, but because it was a promise. That morning, I didn't even make coffee. I went straight to the garage, checked the Harley, checked the locks, checked the footage. Nothing touched, nothing moved. But at 7:42 a.m., just minutes after I stepped back inside, I heard it. A loud knock. Not from the front door, from the back gate. I opened it slowly, and there he stood, a man in khakis, city badge around his neck, clipboard in one hand. Morning, he said flatly. Inspector Lee, we've had a complaint about zoning violations and unapproved exterior modifications. I stared at him. Modifications. He pointed at my rain gutter. That's not city standard. You added it yourself. I nodded slowly. It's a gutter. Bought at Home Depot. Installed 2 years ago. He didn't smile. Still needs a permit if it's visible from the street. And you've got about 6 more issues. 6 more. He went down the list like a prosecutor. Motorcycle noise complaint, unapproved window tinting, illegal trash bin placement, non-native plants near the sidewalk, and shed installed within setback limits. I knew exactly what this was. Kieran had gone from harassment to full-on administrative warfare. I asked him plainly who filed the complaint. He looked up, didn't blink. All anonymous, just responding to a cluster of community reports. Cluster. That was a word designed to sound objective, but I knew what it meant. Karen had mobilized neighbors, maybe bribed, maybe intimidated, maybe just lied enough to make it seem like the entire street had turned against me. It wasn't true. But if it looked real on paper, it didn't matter. The city now had me on record, and the fines were real. The inspector handed me a thick packet. You'll have 30 days to correct or appeal. Fines will begin accumulating at $100 per violation. I did the math. Over $700 a day, it was financial war, and it had just begun. I called my attorney immediately. She flipped through the complaint list while I scanned the footage of the inspector's arrival. This isn't a coincidence, she said. And if that inspector's working with her, we'll find out. But even if he's not, she's smart. She's using the system. You'll have to fight this line by line. I knew she was right. But I also knew what Karen was doing. She wasn't trying to find me. She was trying to force a mistake. One wrong move, one angry response, one lost temper, she'd have me where she wanted. So I kept calm, filed my appeals, reached out to the city zoning department myself and requested full copies of all filed complaints under FOIA. It would take time. But once I had those names, this would stop being anonymous. That night, I replaced my garage camera with a high-res thermal unit. If anyone came within 5 feet of that door again, I'd see their face in 4,000, no matter the darkness. By the end of the week, the fines started showing up $100, $200. $350. All small stabs meant to bleed me slowly. Then came the worst one: unauthorized business use of residential property. The city claimed I had been running a commercial operation from my garage. When I called the code office to ask where that came from, the clerk hesitated. We were shown a video of multiple people entering your garage over several days. I knew exactly what that footage was. It was from when I hosted 2 off-duty FBI analysts who review case materials for the state attorney. Completely legal. Completely private. But on a blurry, silent video, it could look like something else. I requested a hearing. Karen had officially stepped into the deep end, weaponizing city systems like missiles. But I had something she didn't: allies in places she couldn't reach. The state attorney's office called again. They'd received a copy of the inspection report and knew what it was. She's trying to rattle you, the rep said. Don't move. We're preparing formal notices to her legal team now. But they also warned me, you need to be hyper clean. Any violation, even minor, can hurt you later. Don't give her leverage. I followed their advice. Hired a licensed contractor to inspect every line item. Spent over $2,300 fixing things I didn't even know were considered violations. Is that Harley? I parked it inside from now on. Bought soundproofing foam to insulate the garage. Let them try to call it a disturbance now. But as I patched holes and repainted siding, I couldn't shake one thought. If Karen had this much power from her HOA position, how many others had? She'd done this too before me? And how many stayed silent because they couldn't fight back? Then came the email. Subject line: HOA financial records request denied. I had asked for the community's recent expenditures to see if Karen had used HOA funds for personal legal filings. Harold had warned me there were discrepancies. Now, suddenly, I was blocked from viewing the records. Cited reason: ongoing investigation into resident misconduct. The same line Karen used to silence me at the board vote. I forwarded the email to the state attorney. Then 24 hours, they issued a legal subpoena for the HOA's financials. This time, Karen wouldn't control the narrative. But I knew her next move would be dirtier, more desperate. That night, around midnight, my phone buzzed again. No number, no caller ID. One photo. It was my Harley. Parked inside my garage. The angle wasn't from the cameras. It was from inside the window. Someone had been close inside my property. The message was clear. We see everything. We can reach you. I didn't call the cops. I called Harold. He picked up, tired, groggy. They're escalating, I told him. Didn't ask who. He already knew. Then you'd better. Get ready, he said slowly. Because at the next board meeting, Karen's calling for a full community vote to revoke your residency. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, phone buzzing in my hand again. This time a text. One word. From a burner number. Run. Text sat on my screen like a loaded weapon. Run. No punctuation, no context. But it didn't need any. It came through at 1:42 a.m. from a burner number I couldn't trace. I stared at it for a long time, breathing slow, listening for any noise outside. None. The cameras were still, the alarms untouched. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was calculating. I stepped into the hallway and double-checked every lock, every window, every blind. Then I pulled the curtain on the back window and froze. A small stone was sitting perfectly centered on the back porch. It wasn't there before. No note, no damage, just a stone, placed with intent. Calling. Card, a reminder. You're being watched. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was theater. Hence, final act was approaching. I was her target. The HOA meeting notice came just before sunrise. Subject urgent community vote, resident removal consideration, July 10th, just 4 days away. No hearing, no chance to speak, just a vote. The wording was careful, legal sounding, due to repeated community disruption, misuse of property, and escalating tension with neighbors. The board will vote to determine if continued residency of Mr. Redacted is viable for the safety of the neighborhood. I forwarded it to the state attorney's office, my lawyer, and Deputy Moss. All of them said the same thing. She's moving fast. Too fast. She knows the heat's coming. But if the vote passed, Stephen temporarily I'd be removed from the neighborhood and Karen would win. She'd own the narrative, shut down the investigation, and bury everything under silence, unless I found someone who could stop her. That person came out of nowhere. Her name was Rosa Delgado, a quiet woman in her late 50s who lived 2 houses down and had barely said a word to me in 2 years. She knocked on my door that afternoon. No call, no warning. Just showed up holding a blue file folder and shaking slightly. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. I let her in. She sat at my kitchen table and slid the folder across to me. Inside were copies of HOA bank withdrawals, suspicious vendor payments, and emails between Karen and a contractor signed. Under a fake name, Rosé had served as HOA treasurer for 2 years. She'd seen everything. She'd been laundering money through fake landscaping projects. I told Harold last year, ask questions. The next month, he lost voting privileges. I stared at her, stunned. "Why now?" I asked. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Because you didn't run." That night, I compiled every piece of evidence into a digital file and sent it to the state attorney. He called back within the hour. "We're sending a rep to the vote. You're not standing alone this time." I exhaled for the first time in weeks, but Karen didn't know. She thought this would be her finale, her moment to publicly remove me, declare order restored, and erase the trail behind her. So I let her believe it. I didn't respond to the vote notice, didn't confront her, didn't even show my face until the meeting, because I knew the ambush only works when the target walks in unsuspecting. And this time, she would be the one caught off guard. July 10th. The community hall was full again, packed. Karen stood at the front in a blazer, lips tight, smile fake. "This is not personal," she began. "This is about the well-being of our neighborhood. We've seen disruption, conflict, threats of law enforcement involvement. This vote isn't about punishment, it's about peace." She sounded like a senator reading from a cue card. Neighbors nodded. Some looked away from me. Some stared at me like I was guilty already. She was winning again, until I stood. And the state attorney rep stood with me. Karen blinked. Her smile cracked just slightly. "This is a private matter." She snapped, "This is HOA business." The rep held up a badge. "Not anymore." I opened the folder, projected the evidence onto the wall screen. Every transaction, every fake vendor name, every redirected check. Karen's face drained of color. "Stolen information," she hissed. "It's fake. It's certified," the rep interrupted. "And under current review by the state attorney's financial crimes division. We have frozen HOA funds effective immediately pending a full audit." Ow. Murmurs exploded across the room. Karen stumbled. Her son stood abruptly, knocking over a chair. "You can't do this." He yelled, "This is harassment." I stepped forward. So was the call to the cops. The fines, the slander, the intimidation. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, the Queen of Control had nothing to say. The board voted. Not to remove me, but to suspend Karen's HOA authority pending criminal review. Harold reinstated the voting rights she'd stripped from others. Rosa was named interim treasurer. The tide turned in a single night. But the war wasn't over. As people cleared the room, I stood outside in the dark, watching Karen walk to her car in silence. She didn't scream, didn't threaten, just stared at me like a chess player who'd misread the board. One move too late. Then she got in, started the engine, and drove off. But she didn't go home. The next morning, I received word from the Sheriff's office. Karen had disappeared. Left the city. Car found abandoned. Cell phone off. Just one note left behind at her house. 3 words, typed all caps. This isn't over.